Tonight we've really got a lot going on. I mean, we had a really, really awesome Comet Elenin show a couple of weeks ago, and the downloads are just coming on hot. I mean, this is probably one of the biggest shows we've done ever. And tonight, really following up on finding the alternate theories and explanations for Comet Elenin. Now, one thing that is, for me, the one holdback on Comet Elenin is that if it is a brown dwarf, the nemesis dark star, the twin to our sun, well, if it's inside the orbit of Jupiter, we should be seeing it now. We shouldn't have to be looking for images of a young comet on the internet that are being provided by astronomers. But that does not mean this is not a significant object. It does not mean it is not causing problems for us on the planet. But what I have found is, after chewing through a lot of scenarios and looking at it, the call on it that I think is, well, probably closest, at least for me, it feels right for me, is the Hopi prophecy, the blue Kachina, the blue star Kachina and the red star Kachina. The blue star is the harbinger of the red star, and the red star is the one that really gives us the, oh baby, you know. Yeah. So with that, just starting off real fast, let me throw to Richard in Canada. What's your initial thoughts on Comet Elenin coming into it?
Oh, my initial thoughts is a great sign. A lot of people talks about we are now entering in the last days, you know, and we have several aspects that lead us to this conclusion. We have some, you know, political ones. We have, if we look at the weather, it's going crazy everywhere on Earth. So, but I was very, you know, attracted by the Elenin comet because there was a lot of things being said about that comet everywhere on the internet, and you know the way they announce us, they have discovered it. So I get in it and I start my own study about that things, and I have discovered very, very amazing things. Like you said, some are directly related to the Hopi prophecies, and some with the Sumerian ones.
I think that's the interesting thing that we were seeing with the Sumerian aspects, and but also we have mentions in the Torah code. There's different. I'm seeing a convergence of prophecy here that's bringing to it. That being said, I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater for those that believe Comet Elenin is a brown dwarf. I am not inclined in that way, I would say, is because you have a planet-sized object, particularly something that's the size of a gas giant, that's inside the orbit of Jupiter, and this close to the ecliptic, where, frankly, 90% of all of the observations are made from our planet. Now, it just says to me, hold on a second, you know, there could be something else going on here. When I did my article, could Comet Elenin be a decoy? What I was seeing, fellows, is what I would call a change in the chatter. You know, when we get these alerts from Big Sis, says that we're anticipating a terror attack because there's an increase in the chatter. And what they're talking about is that there's more discussion, and also the discussion is not along the usual vein. So they notice the difference. It may not be substantive at a granular level, but at a larger pattern level, they see something. And I've been following the Comet Elenin story right from the beginning. I mean, this was not something that slipped past me. But I was really more interested in stepping back from it, not getting deep into all the competing theories, and to observe the chatter. And there are two kinds of chatter that we look for: organic and synthetic. And the organic chatter is just the natural stuff. It'll start up with a topic, and if a topic is hot, you see it ramping up. It might plateau a little bit, or it's just having a gradual rise, and then it'll hit a critical mass point and follow a normal-looking bell curve in terms of public interest. On the other hand, when you have a topic where there's a big injection of disinformation, all right, what you see is an anomalous chatter pattern. You see early spikes and a lot of heavy interest, and it can collapse within a matter of days sometimes, and then it builds back up. So that's the chatter pattern I've been seeing, and that tells me that this is just not a bunch of folks on the internet trying to make sense of something, but it's them plus others who are trying to prevent them from making sense of it. And I was wondering, Richard, I know you have your ear to the railroad track like I do. You hear the big iron, thingamajig coming down the rails. How does this sit with you? Are you seeing the same thing?
Yes. A lot of information is very odd or weird because it tends to make us think this thing doesn't exist, okay, or it's very difficult to point out if it does exist or not. But you can see another tendency that make these things like the end of the world or a Nibiru, and I'm not sure. I agree with you that this thing is not a brown dwarf for different reasons. One of them is if it would be a brown dwarf in our solar system, close to Mars, we would not be able to make that show first and just just speak on the phone. I think that everything on Earth would be broke. The power grids and communication satellites and everything would go off by the time we're speaking now. So
right.
I think, and if we look at in the prophecies, the ancient texts, the OP or the Bible, or even in the Sumerian, it's clear that there is an harbinger sign before we see the red kachina or the red great dragon in the heaven.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Rick? What is it you're seeing about common LNN that gives you pause and things that are really grabbing your attention?
Well, it hasn't been out there very long. It just kind of appeared, and one of the first things where I heard about it is you guys are all familiar with this gentleman on YouTube that calls himself BP. He started out by giving updates on what was going on during the BP oil disaster, and that name kind of stuck on his YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. And then he's continued to upload all kinds of odd information. Sometimes it's information about the sun, and gosh darn it, a lot of the times when he puts stuff up there, I'll look at it and it's hard to explain what he's found. There's some things that are really pretty bizarre.
You're right.
And it's like I think he has this very slow, kind of drolling voice. Well, I don't know what this is, guys, but it's pretty weird. So that's, to me, is rather entertaining, actually, because I think, what has this guy got this time? Well, a few weeks ago, he had used his space, program where you can plot the orbits of the planets in the solar system, and this comet came up in his computer graph. And what caught my attention about it was that it was basically coming across the Earth's orbital path in October, almost like a semi-truck at an intersection, and would kind of scream by right in front of us, and then it would be gone. And what I thought was interesting about it was that it looks like it comes pretty darn close. Of course, it's hard to tell on these little computer models of the solar system how far away anything is, and but yet I thought, well, that's interesting. So I started researching Comet LNN, and some people had said, oh, the name is encoded, it means extinction level event, and then it was, well, it's really named after the Russian scientist that discovered it. On not even that big of a telescope, he found it, and the comet is relatively weak in brightness. It's something like 1/23rd of the brightness of Hale-Bopp when it came really close a few years ago. Mm-hmm. But it's odd in that its core, they have said, if we can trust the information we get, it's sometimes hard to know if we're being told the truth about these things, but they say the core is 4 kilometers in diameter. So that's big but not enormous, but the dust cloud is 80,000 kilometers in diameter. So the dust cloud is really big. So I thought, well, maybe we'll get a sizable meteor shower out of it, and all of that. But then, I actually think Richard here sent me some white papers, if I remember correctly. I think it was you, Richard, that sent me this. I get so much stuff, it's like I have to apologize. I feel inundated sometimes by information. And you guys are great, and I always try to return the favor if I find something good to send it back to you and Marshall. But, Cornell University came out with some papers on Comet LNN that said that they believed it was perturbing the Earth's mantle and causing seismic anomalies. And some of them attributed the Japan quake to Comet LNN. I'm thinking, I don't know how it would do that, but these guys are scientists and coming out with this information, and it seems like Cornell University is the only viable institution that's even mentioning this stuff anymore. All the rest of them won't even talk about it. It's the same problem that L.A. Marzulli and I had just trying to get basic information about what the heck was going on with the moon. A while back when we were studying that, we observed that there was a problem with it. And another interesting talk, we'll talk about the moon in a minute, but I'm not sure the moon is finished doing its moving. It may be back at its funny tricks again. And so something's perturbing the moon, I think, and maybe it's Comet LNN, I don't know.
Well, it's, again, for me, it comes back to that, are we looking at a brown dwarf, or are we looking at a harbinger of a brown dwarf? Now, that's the thing that's really been hanging in my mind from the get-go, was that it's easy to find, because you look at the amount of actual data that's available on the object, and it's coming in, there's astronomers that are tracking it, they're reporting it, but they're still talking about it being a young comet with a huge, huge coma. And I know that Cornell paper is saying that coma really reminds, he calls it a georesonator effect. It reminds me somewhat of the electric universe theory. But,
that's what
the
Chuck
real
Missler
question,
believes.
Yeah, I think the real question in the virtual chat room right now, we have Susan, and she's in there, and I've got a private chat going with her, and she's flagging stuff that seems to be indicative of what people are talking about. And this is by Dr. Kate, and she says, are we sure this is a comet versus a dwarf star? Which really goes to what we've really been talking about. My vote is LNN is a comet, period.
Yeah, according to the Cornell University, a Class L round dwarf will have from 30 times to 80 times the weight of the mass of Jupiter. So it's a huge mass we're talking about. If this thing is this weight, this mass, and it is situated close to Mars, we would expect, or we would see now, we would see, a huge problem with the orbit of everything. We would see the moon is going very far from the Earth, and the Earth would change her path or her orbit, and everything would change because we were talking about a huge mass here.
Right.
Yeah, and this was something that we really discussed this in our book Planet X Forecast and 2012 Survival Guide. And one of the things we really felt was that this object would not be naked eye visible until it was inside the orbit of Jupiter. Assuming, which if it's on the other side of the sun, that's a different situation. But
could that also be, Marshall? Could it also be because it's coming in at 90-degree angle to our normal orbital path?
Yeah, it's pretty close to the ecliptic. Huh? It's not, deep under the ecliptic. It's like 5-7 degrees only. It's very close to the ecliptic. So I would say this thing is not. We would have seen that, for a while, or because of the maybe our atmosphere ionization, because when you get close to the sun, there's an electrical interaction between both objects. For sure, they will have one. So I agree that we would see that thing at this time if it would be a brown dwarf.
Yeah, and
I think I'm in agreement with you guys on that. I don't believe it should be a brown dwarf by everything I've read so far.
Okay. But I got to read this one comment from the virtual room, and This is from Rocketeer. So, Marshall, are you now saying I can stop storing food in water because now it's only a comet? Rocketeer,
No.
if you stop storing food in water now, then, dear friend, you are stupid and you deserve to die, okay? I mean, I'm being that blunt. We're saying it's not just a comet, Rocketeer. My position is it is a harbinger. I think if there's a reason to get off your tuchus, all of you out there, and get your little yayas down to Costco or Walmart or wherever you do your bulk buying and load up. I'm talking about burn the cards. Because let's look at what's happening in the world, folks. We're losing crops.
Oh, yes.
Look what's happening along the Mississippi, all right? Look at these farming communities that are getting slammed right now with tornadoes. You know,
the drought in Texas.
The drought in Texas. You know, all of these are, it's the death of 1,000 staffs, all right? It's everyone's going, oh, it's got one big thing. You know, hey, I'd like to just tell me when Yellowstone's going to erupt, and then, yeah, I could definitely figure it's time to start preparing money. And, you know, folks, I can tell you that yesterday I went out and I spent several $100s to finish out the rest of my supplies, you know, because you buy stuff that you use and you roll through it. And I monitor the prices. And I was, you know, stuff that I was buying a year ago is 25% higher, in some cases almost double, all right? And so the point I'm trying to get
prices
to,
are going up quickly.
Yes, and they're going to go up much more quickly now, and especially with, you know, what the developments that are coming on in the Middle East. We had on Daniel Dean, and this guy is he engineers electrical systems, off-the-grid systems. Now, he started his business working with companies that were going off the grid or people that were building big houses. They wanted to be eco-friendly. Now he's going from can to can every day. I mean, he and his wife are just, they barely get enough, 7 hours a night. That's it. Because the demand right now for underground bunkers is phenomenal. And we're talking about bunkers that are $500,000 on up.
Yeah, it's booming. Yeah.
It's booming. And the reason that they're giving is they're all being told from their contacts inside the Beltway that there's the high likelihood we're going to wind up in a massive, massive war sometime in late summer, maybe going into September. And that when that happens, you're going to see a constriction of oil supplies. And folks, you know, next time you tank up your car, I want you to think about something. For every calorie of food you're going to put in your mouth, it takes 10 calories of oil energy to get it there, all right? Petroleum is why...
It's not very efficient.
It's not very efficient.
Absolutely.
It is why the population of the planet is so big, because... You know, America is a food basket of the world. Other countries are big exporters, all right? But once there's oil contractions and tankers are being sunk by terrorists, infrastructure, it comes under terror attack, and they're going to take out all the different oil infrastructure, whether it's pipelines or refineries and so forth. All of this drives up the price of oil. As oil is more difficult to get, there's less of it for running farm tractors, the trucks that bring this stuff to you. I mean, a lot of the food you get in, you know, in the store today takes a lot of petroleum to bring it in from overseas, so it all looks nice and fresh, although it usually tastes like cardboard. But the thing here is that not only that, it takes a lot of oil for all of the petrochemical fertilizers, the nitrates that they're using. So with all of this, you know, we are seeing, to me, we're on the threshold of a staggering rise in the price of the basic things you get. And what will happen is the food prices are going to go up so much that you're not going to have discretionary income to buy stockpile, all right? You're not going to have discretionary income to get an extra 3 or 4 months supply of food. You're going to need every penny you got to get what you get. What do you think, Rick?
I agree. You know, it's I heard someone tell me today that Glenn Beck was on saying this very same thing, which is something we haven't heard much from any of the media. I went on CNN yesterday to see what the news was on the Mississippi, and I had to look way down, like in the lower subheads, to find anything about it. And this is a gigantic disaster that's going on.
Of course,
and the news isn't even covering it. It's hardly even being covered. And they just want to keep the Kool-Aid flowing to everybody so that people don't get panicky. But a smart person will realize that, hey, something's going on here, and we need to prepare for it as best we can. And, you know, just the price of ice cream here in Los Angeles, I've noticed over the past 6 months has doubled. You could get like a half gallon of ice cream for $2.50, and now it's like $5.50 for a half gallon. And it's like, that's a sizable increase. It's like over 100% increase. So, you know, you have to look for deals, and you can find those deals. And one thing that I've been concerned with, there's a lot of dried food and things like that you can get, but then there's the aspect of storing up enough water in case water gets cut off. And on top of all this is we're printing money like crazy in the trillions of dollars, and that can't go on much longer. So we've got the makings of a perfect storm here, and I think if it happened in the United States, it wouldn't be so genteel like it has been in Japan, where people end up helping each other. I mean, it would be like that in some communities here, but I doubt if it would be like that in South Central LA. I think there would be guys out there with AK-47s. It would be like, you know, whatever they need, they're going to just take. So that is a little scary to me, and I could see how that could happen after seeing the way the riots have been here, you know, over the past few decades, how quickly things can go south.
Disappear, yeah.
What about in Canada?
Okay, the report we got from everywhere in the world now, it's like the crops are underwater or there's droughts. There's no normality anymore. I mean, it's a complete disaster in Russia, in New Zealand, in Australia, even in the U.S. As you know, you got fire in Texas, and if you go up through the north, it's completely flood everywhere. I mean, all the central part of the USA now is underwater. So I think it's a complete disaster. It's a nightmare, and we can see it now. It is not just talking about it. We are living it now, and I mean, in just one year, we can imagine this is very, very scary what is going on now. So, and you cannot see any report that we got a good crop, everything is fine. You will not see anymore. It's finished.
Yeah, I agree with that. Got a couple of questions for you, Richard.
Mm-hmm.
The chat room is really hot.
Okay.
Let me just read them off, and then you take the ones you want. Are we sure this comet, or excuse me, what are the odds of Earth changes when Elenin is between us and the sun?
Mm-hmm.
Another one is, how do they know this thing is what it's made of to give it such a large mass? And what about a pole shift in September?
Okay. I will give you information that maybe can answer all the questions. Okay, first of all, I'm sure you got the information about a report from President Medvedev by Minister Serdyukov of the Russian Defense Ministry. So if we just resume this report, okay, it is, I will read just a few of the texts I have in front of me now. They said that most ominous, okay, they're talking about Elenin, first of all, okay, and they goes with this. Most ominous in Minister Serdyukov's report in his assertion that comet Elenin appears to be in direct contact with a mysterious Jupiter-sized planet discovered beyond the orbit of Pluto. So I see two things. I think that this Elenin comet is maybe ionized by this secondary star by some process. And this is why maybe the Elenin has a very powerful electric, power or something like that. Maybe there's a phenomena of some kind that makes it invisible, not as bright as we would expect normally. It's like, have you ever experienced an air gap? When you have an air gap, you have a very high potential difference between both sides, okay? And when the difference of potential rise a lot, at some point you will have an electrical arc between the both sides. But the air gap by itself will remain, not bright. It will remain as it was, no light in it. It will not start to get red, or So maybe we can. This is a kind of phenomena that we see now. But the report is very clear that there is a connection between both objects.
Well, I find that's interesting that you're bringing in this Russian report.
And
Did they say more about this second object?
The second object, what they say it's written. Elenin would be in direct contact with a mysterious Jupiter-sized planet discovered beyond the orbit of Pluto. So, NASA, according to the GPL, orbit viewer, Elenin is now, as we talk together, it is located close to the orbit of Mars. So it cannot be the second object, a Jupiter-sized object, because they say that it is beyond the orbit of Pluto. It is still outside our solar system. So this is a very interesting report, and I think this is a genuine report.
Did they say it is specifically, because, outside the system is much further than Jupiter. Was there any specificity about that?
No, they just say it's beyond the orbit of Pluto. I have no more information about the location or where it should be now. But this is a very highly credible and very interesting report. And it is according to the prophecies, the OP. We have the red Kachina first. No, sorry, the blue Kachina, and then we have the red Kachina. And the red Kachina is the OP call it the purificator. So, okay, and this is very important. This is not the blue Kachina that will purify the Earth, based according to their prophecy. This is the red one, the last one. So I think we can expect this is the last Harbinger sign before the red dragon, according to the Bible, or the red Kachina, according to the OPs. And by the way, I've made some research about the word Kachina. This is more according to the native, a kind of a supernatural being, okay, that remove his mask. So why to remove your mask? When someone remove his mask, you will be usually you are surprised. Oh, I thought you were Marshall Master, but you're Richard Shaw, So you got surprised. You got a surprise.
Right.
So this is a supernatural being. Some will call that demon, entities, or whatever, and they remove their mask. So the blue Kachina will remove his mask, and the red Kachina will remove his mask. So we will know what they are really.
So they not only become visible, but they become visible enough that we can actually see what the object is.
Yes, and what they bring with them. I think we are very close to expect maybe very scary things. It's before the end of the years, and I think September is a key, or seem to be a month of a very high importance. If we look at what they are trying to do with Israel and the Middle East, and it's huge there, and all converge to September.
It all converges to September, and I agree with that. That's the same pattern I'm seeing. AK Survivor, Susan lets us know that AK Survivor's got a question. What about all the talk of a pole shift, maybe in the September-October time frame? I can see a war in the Middle East in September. I don't know about a pole shift.
Okay.
What's your thought on that?
Okay. I don't know if you want to go through the Sumerian text, the one I sent you yesterday, Marshall. But I think it is very interesting to read these texts. Maybe you can read.
Could you go ahead and just read those? You'll have to forgive me. I have to get those off my other system.
I have them in front of me. Okay. It is the text was taken from a book of Zecharia Sitchin book named The End of Days. So on page 199, he translated, according to him, I'm not sure, I don't know if he was able to do that. I'm not here to say if Sitchin was what he claimed he was, but according to him, he translated some Sumerian tablet, and it gives some verse. I'm going to read the first verse for you, and Richard Shaw will like that very much. The first verse we have is, when the moon in its calculated time is not seen, there will be an invasion of a mighty city. So this make me think about why not Jerusalem to be invited by September? This is what they want to do, but it is just my thought. Maybe some people will think differently than me, but this is an idea. This is very interesting to see that. And when the moon in its calculated time is not seen, I really recommend everyone to buy the Watchers 2 made by Richard Shaw and Marzulli, because you will see a real evidence that the moon is not at her place. There's some change. We cannot explain them, but it's real. So it's happening now. And I have another, yeah, go.
I was just going to let me add to that just briefly, and I don't want to stop your flow here. I talked to a good friend of mine who I really respect, who is he's a special effects expert in Hollywood.
Okay.
He's been involved in the movie industry for over 30 years. He built the major components to the original Terminator robot in 1984. He worked on Pirates of the Caribbean 2 and 3, and is constantly working on stuff. And occasionally we work on projects together. And he said he had his, I think he said it was his niece, right after the eclipse, and he was showing her the moon. He said, let me show you the rabbit in the moon. He called it the rabbit in the moon instead of the man in the moon. And he said, it's right there. And he said he couldn't find it. And he said, well, that's strange. The moon doesn't look like it normally does. So I was really pleased when he told me that, because it meant that someone I really respect, who has a brilliant mind as a physicist, and who does all these complicated effects that require that kind of a scientific background, also noticed that something was wrong with the moon. And then I heard today from someone else, they said, yesterday actually, L.A. Marzulli told me that a friend of his said that he thought the moon was starting to rotate again. Now, I haven't seen it since then to know whether, I'm much more familiar with the lunar surface than I was before all this happened. So if it came up in any different position, I'd immediately be able to identify that it looks different than it should be. But we're going to have to keep an eye on it and see if it's starting to rotate again, not just wobble, which is a normal function, but if it's actually rotating.
But I heard that you try to get some information or proof or evidence from professional astronomers, and what was the result of that? We
did. Both L.A. and I made many phone calls, and I called Griffith Observatory here in Hollywood, and also the Jet Propulsion Labs, and Lynn talked with Pepperdine University and UCLA, and also talked with, as another contact, to some of the same places I had been talking to try to get some answers. And what I thought was interesting, I said, here's the way I positioned it, because this is true. I noticed that there was something wrong with the moon the day after the eclipse, and went home immediately and looked all over the internet to see if I could find anything about it. And no major network news program had anything about the moon at all. All those stories were gone, and they were on to, I don't know, Jennifer Lopez or something like that. So I was looking at trying to figure out if someone noticed something wrong with it. So what did I do? I went on YouTube. I figured normal people will probably mention it before the news media will. And what did I find? But, 5 or 6 home videos made by the moon with people saying, what's wrong with the moon? Why does it look like this? I've seen the moon my whole life, and it does not look like it normally looks. So I thought, yes, I'm not crazy. Something is happening. So the next evening, I went up on the roof of this building in Hollywood and shot a picture of the moon with the only camera I had. It was just a small HD camera. So it wasn't like a telescope with a camera attached or anything like that. And I showed it to L.A. Marzulli, and he thought that looked strange too. So that's what started us on this quest but we could not get any local authorities, any astronomers, any scientists to weigh in on what was wrong with the moon. And the funny response was that I got, they said, I said, we're just trying to answer some questions that young people are having on the internet of why the moon looks funny. And we just like a scientist to weigh in on what he thinks this could be. And they said, well, we're not interested in that subject. You guys are the observatory and you're not interested in the moon? He hung up on me.
Well, it makes me think about that prophecy from the book of Enoch. Okay, it won't take long. It's a very short text. It was
okay, and then Richard, when you finish with Enoch, the chat room is absolutely on fire. I have got a whole slew of questions coming in.
It will take 30 seconds.
So let's do Enoch, and then we'll get to these questions.
Okay, because they will like that text I'm going to tell you now. Okay, and Richard, this is one is for the research you have done. Okay, in the book of Enoch, chapter 80, book 3. Okay, verse 7, we have. Okay, this is a prophecies about the end of days. Okay, and the whole order of stars shall be concealed from the sinners, and the thoughts of those on the earth shall concern them. The word is, I'm going to spell it because I think there's different spelling for it. It is E-R-R.
So air?
Air, yes, some will pronounce it air, but
are we talking about like air from your ways, or air as a city?
No, air, E-R-R. The word E-R-R.
Yeah.
So because there's two spelling for that, some will say air, some will say so I was not sure.
That's a very interesting passage you found. As always, you always find really interesting stuff.
Yeah. So as you can see, you're not crazy at all. It is an ancient text. Again, it's there. I mean, this is the old book. People can go and get this book for free on the internet. So it's the book 3, chapter 80, verse 7. And Richard, this one was for you. I got a copy of this before the show. So Marshall, go ahead with the question.
Okay, here we go. Now let's see. I'll just read off. We've got several of them, and then you guys can take a stab at whatever floats your boat. So what does it mean with the connection, and the connection, I guess, between the two objects? What about the Russians saying this thing is being maneuvered? It's under intelligent control.
Okay.
I've heard that. Interesting.
Also, is this thing, is it being maneuvered or steered through the asteroid belt? And what is your take on the YouTube video that discusses a correlation between past LNN and Earth alignments and earthquakes and future dates? What I can say with that is actually, there's a fellow at Cornell who has written the Geo-Resonator, and he's actually agreed to give me an article interview for Yowza, and I am going to be taking a lot of questions out of the chat room tonight and throwing him at him for this actual article interview. So I really appreciate this robust discussion. I think that there is a correlation, and I believe that I had a strong inclination in that way before I read the Cornell paper, and then after that, for me, it pretty much was a cinch. And I think, however, we've got more forces at play than just Comet LNN and Earth. I think it's, again, going back to Blue Katrina, Red Katrina. Then here is the severe climate changes that are occurring worldwide obviously show that the zones have shifted, even if only by half a dozen degrees. Anybody want to take a shot at that one?
Oh, maybe Richard, you can start. And
well, I'm not sure I understand the question, Marshall. The first part of the question was, could the comet LNN be under artificial control?
I think this is an interesting question, and we would be better to go through that one first. And yeah.
I only have an opinion about that.
Yeah. By the way, I think what he means with half a dozen degrees is he's talking about the change in magnetic north that has been moving faster, and so now we have airports that are having to renumber runways. For those of you that are
we're talking about a magnetic pole shift.
I think he's talking about the magnetic, and for those of you that have got a whole big box of Jefferson charts. Tough darts, farmer. Guess what? Jefferson is going to cash out. It's the only company that's going to make a bloody fortune on comet element or anything else, because now they've got to, reprint all these maps to keep them current. But anyway, go for it, Rick.
Well, the idea of intelligent control, artificial control, I think is interesting. This is only an opinion. I certainly wouldn't voice anything that I would prove is factual or anything like that. There has been some very strange things going on around the sun that are rather unexplainable. Objects that seem to be streaking across the sky, things that are like flying into the sun and disappearing, planet-sized objects that are rotating next to the sun one day, gone the next, back again 3 days later. These are big UFOs. I mean, I call them a UFO not in the sense of them being spaceships, but because we don't know what the heck these things are. And I think one thing that was interesting was, the SOHO satellite that's taking pictures of the sun and snapping pictures of it. We've seen 2 occasions where this really large object crosses through in front of the sun. And then Richard here, I think, had brought to my attention an object that actually changed direction as it did that. It kind of went down and then back up.
Yeah.
Am I right there, Richard? And this was like something big. I mean, it was enough to block the view of the sun from the spacecraft. And it wasn't just something just passing through the vision. It went down and then up again. So I'm thinking, well, that's not normal. That's not the normal orbital path of a planetary object that we've ever seen in our lifetime or that anyone's ever told us is possible. Something moved it. So it was interesting to me that right after that happened, or generally within just a few days of that coming out, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but Michio Kaku, the Japanese physicist, is always on. Yeah, he's always on CNN or MSNBC, and he's trying to answer technical questions with this regard. And for some reason, he went into a discussion the other day about interplanetary civilizations. Well, this is a level 1 civilization. This is a level 2. And if you're a level 2, you have the ability to move planets and large planetary bodies. And I'm going, why is he telling us this? What does that have to do with anything?
Right. Very odd.
Yeah, why is he telling us this?
And he's not crazy
telling us this.
Yeah, he's
It
very.
was just too coincidental.
Connecting the dots here. Hey, while you're talking about this, got a couple of moon questions here. You want them from the virtual?
Sure.
Yeah, go.
Okay. One from Village Idiot. Is it possible the moon's rotation has changed and we're seeing the backside that normally doesn't face the Earth? Well, you were shooting it during the equinox when we had this strange rotation. Did you see that, or is just simply something else?
What we're seeing is it's the same side of the moon, but the moon apparently went upside down for a while. Flipped upside down.
Yeah.
If we'd have seen the backside of it, the whole surface of the moon would have been totally incomprehensible to most people. And we know that how many degrees it was off because what we could do, we could take the normal view of the moon that we're used to seeing and put that into a effects program and cause it to be 50% opacity, take the picture that we had of the moon during the eclipse or shortly thereafter, taken from level ground with a camera on a tripod so we're not like shooting straight up in the air where we don't know which side is up, and superimposing the 2 moons and seeing where we were and then rotating it and then actually measuring that amount of rotation in the computer. And that's how I came up with 135 degrees in Watchers 2. Now, that may or may not be accurate. That's only our visible, just what we observed. The difference was, and putting it into programs, our visible observation was that. And I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's what we observed.
So you were observing the same face of the moon that we always see, except it was just turned.
It was upside down, and it looked to me almost like I spent time in South Africa a few years ago working on a movie there, and I always kind of chuckled when I looked at the moon because I'd have to stand on my head to make it look correct. So it reminded me of being in Cape Town, South Africa, because it was like upside down. And I have to say, quite frankly, it's when I saw it like that, and I know this sounds really crazy, and I'm not a crazy person or anything like that, but it scared me. Because I thought, what is going on that would do this to the moon? What the heck is happening that could do something that big?
Yeah.
You were out there and you were combing the waterfront for answers. And interesting question from Bill X. Are there any private facilities that can do a distance to the moon? Got to be a way to get the distance to the Earth with a laser. And actually, they have a reflector. It was one of the Apollo missions put it on the moon,
right.
And they used that for getting the distance. I'm not aware of any private facilities that are doing it, although, it's just a reflector up there. If you know where it is, you can target it.
You could probably ping it and see. I know that we just had, on March the 18th of this year, we had what was called supermoon, where the moon was closest to the Earth than it's been in something like 18 years, or 18 or 20 years. I don't know exactly how long
I
it's
remember.
Been, but it looked really big.
Now,
but it did look at the same orientation. It wasn't like flipped upside down when it did that. But, we were afraid that with the moon being so close, with the Earth's being so tenuous right now with all the earthquakes, that it might trigger another one. And, we've had a slew of earthquakes. Ever since January of this year, we've had, at the end of Watchers 2, we just kind of throw them up on the screen. If anybody is noticing the background during the credit roll, there's like a list of all the earthquakes between January and May, and it's just like, it's a stunning number of huge, enormous earthquakes, 6.0 and 7.0, 8.0 earthquakes.
Yeah, it doesn't stop all the times.
Yeah. Now, we have a couple of interesting questions here, and I'm probably going to throw these at Richard.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to give you the questions, but then we're going to take a 2-minute break and come back and answer these questions. But these came in from Boris Artemenko, and why has the course of LNN been adjusted so many times, and even the expected distance it will come closer to Earth has changed so much. And that one, I'll take that one on. But the other one is, he says, my fellow researchers report shifts of up to 3 degrees in various points, including the U.S. and Southeast Asia, happening in variables from day to day. Susan, in the chat room, get Boris to be specific about this. He's got, shifts of up to 3 degrees. 3 degrees of what? And could you get that for us back when we come after the break? And right now what I want to do is, for everybody out there, to give you a chance to go pour yourself a cup of coffee. I have one question. The course of LNN has been adjusted so many times, and even the expected distance will come closer to the Earth. All right. Well, the thing is, first off, there's several different answers to this, and then when I'm finished, then Richard, you can jump in on it. But first off is that when an object is first discovered, creating an ephemeris, which is really a way of saying, okay, we expect this object to be here, then here, then here, kind of like a train schedule or a bus schedule. You're going to know where it's going to be. And it takes a series of observations to get that. And so that can be part of it. The other part of it is a comet, and comets are cagey. They're fast movers. They can change. This one is coming in near the ecliptic. Comets that tend to come in a polar orbit are a little weirder. So that leads me to believe that perhaps some of these erratic course changes, which may seem to be something that is an intelligent control, could actually be an interaction with another body we're not seeing. This is a lot of times when these calculations are made, and the assumption is it's a 2-body orbit. And one of the things that you have to understand is that when you have multiple bodies and they're all influencing each other, that we simply do not possess enough computing power to crunch those kind of numbers. Once you start getting into 3, 4 object, that's it. The mathematical variables are just way too much. But the oddities in the course, there could be some intelligent control. For me, I don't like to throw any of the options away. I don't want to throw any of the ideas or the theories away. It's not about being it right. It's about getting it right. And, to the heart of the mystery like this, there are many, many roads. Richard, what's your take on it?
Okay, first of all, what we should expect from a normal comet you know, 20 years ago, because in these days everything seems supernatural. Okay, but
it does. It's true.
What we could expect from a very normal comet is a deceleration of its speed, because
I think the last time we had a normal comet, you know, Sonny and Cher still married, but anyway, go ahead.
You're right. Maybe farther than that times. So, but a normal comet, what it will do, it will decelerate sometimes because it gains weight. And the way it works is it receives CME from the sun, a very high charge, negative charge of electricity from the sun, and as it hits the comet surface, it will make it becomes very negative, okay? And every particles around it that is positively charged compared to the comet surface or the comet core will start to be attracted by it and will stick on it. So gaining the weight, it will decrease the speed will decrease. But here what we see, we don't see that. What we see is a fluctuation on the orbit of this comet Helen. So it is going just up to the right, and it comes back to the center and goes to the left, and you know, like a sinusoidal shape. It is turning. It is slightly changing, you know, along the mean orbit. I should say the what do you say that the expected orbit. Okay. So this is very strange, and
the ephemeris, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is caused by a kind of I think this thing has several big chunk, okay? And I'm not sure if they are attracted by a gravitational force, but I would say it's better than it would be an electrical force that keep this chunk together. And I think you should have a main body, a main core, with another one turning around the central one. So it makes it, you know, wobbling to left, to the right. I say that because I've seen some picture of that thing, Helen, and you can see some chunk, not maybe one core, but several chunk around this thing. So it's just my thoughts. I'm not sure of what I'm saying here. Like Richard told you, he filmed the moon and it tilted 180 degrees completely. We can't explain this phenomena. I mean, it's becoming very hard now, but this is for real. We can film these phenomena, and it's there.
Okay. I have a very wild theory if you want to hear it.
Oh, bring that bad boy on.
When you go back into, I mean, since we've done Watchers 2, the big question that we asked in that film is, do ancient texts or ancient prophetic texts, do they tell us what we're experiencing now? And, you know, we didn't just use the Bible. We looked at other texts, too, which were ancient Jewish texts like the Talmud and the Kabbalah and the Zohar, and also the Hopi Indians. And what's very strange is that all of these texts seem to be echoing each other.
Yeah.
Which I think is more than coincidence. Now, by far in our studies, and I don't want this to be misconstrued as religion because it's not, but by far the most information we discovered is in the Bible on these events, and also in the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. And we're getting the most accurate Torah codes that we've ever gotten on current events and on astronomical events. It's just stunning is what's coming out in the Torah codes right now. I mean, I just spent 2 days with Rabbi Glazerson, who is an expert in ancient Hebrew. We've been working on the Torah codes together for many years. And he called me from New York, said he's in the States. He wants to fly to Los Angeles and spend 2 days with me. This happened last week. So he did that. He said, I have to show you the Bin Laden tables. I have to show you these, and I can't do it over the Internet. I want to show you myself. So I said, okay, fine. So he comes in, and you might have remembered if you've seen on Marshall's website the Torah Code 2012 film that I've been working on and trying to get funded for several years here. But I think we're getting much closer now because people are realizing this is it. but there was a bin Laden code that Professor Rips had discovered several years ago after the Twin Towers. And it said Twin Towers, terrorist attack, and all this. And then on one of the pages it said, bin Laden, revenge belongs to the Messiah. It was this enormous sentence that appeared in encoded text in the book of Numbers, which is, you know, it could have ended up anywhere in the scripture or scattered throughout the entire Torah and encoded that way, but instead it all ended up in chapter 20 of the book of Numbers. So after this happened, Glazerson decided to go back in that table after bin Laden was pronounced dead. And in that very same table, he pulled out his computer and looked for these other words, and it had all this other information about bin Laden just suddenly appeared. And it said, surely he will be killed. He will be shot. Bin Laden punished. Bin Laden the murderer. All this stuff came out. And then in one line below all of that, it said Barack Obama. And on the same line of text that it said Barack Obama, it said son of a maidservant. I mean, it had stuff in there. It was the biggest, most humongous Torah code that we've ever discovered. And then shortly after that, Professor Herlich sent me a code on the Japan nuclear disaster, and it had meltdown in Japan and all that. Now, this would be no big deal. People could easily brush this off saying, oh, it's all just coincidence. You can find codes in any text. Well, this particular one that Herlich sent on Japan, I'm getting to the moon here, believe me, but I have to preface it with this information. The one that he sent on Japan, he ran through the cluster computer at City University in New York. Now, cluster computer has 30 CPUs. It can do in 8 days what a normal PC would take 300 days to do. And he ran the Japan nuclear table through 100,000 other random Hebrew texts as basically a comparison to see if it came up on any of these other texts. And the p-value for that table was 2.5 in 100,000, meaning that it was more than just random chance and that you could find a compact table like that in any text. So it was just before all of this happened, as we was working on Watchers 2, I asked Rabbi Glazerson to do a table on the moon. And the table he came up with said, will be observed a change in the moon. It came up in a complete sentence, and then it said in 5771, which is the Hebrew year for 2011. So this information came out of 3,323-year-old text.
Wow, incredible.
And it's just, this stuff continues to amaze me. I never get tired of it because I don't ever know what's going to happen next. That stuff is just coming out. So we have that. And then we have the Hopi Indian text that talks about the blue star and the red star, all the stuff that Richard here was mentioning, which is really interesting stuff. They also talk about, in other Hopi Indian texts, about America, they call it Turtle Island, and that somehow it would split in half or something like that. And we're seeing this crazy stuff going on in the Mississippi and along the New Madrid fault line. Something seems to be perturbing the Earth.
Bada bing. Okay, now this really, I have Susan who's helping us with the Susan PX 2012. She's helping us with the message board and the chat room. And there's a message here from Why I Need a Username. And the listener's going to have to answer that question for themselves. Says Marshall, economic, geopolitical, and other major indicators preceding the arrival of Nemesis Nibiru, in my opinion, will be a mega quake in the news, Madrid fault, successive air risings in the Middle East. And now, boy, this one just hammers something. I put a post up, got something off of Just Before News, and there was, this was from a pilot who was reporting that his unit is now going to be involved in the largest disaster drill in the history of the U.S., and they are training for a new Madrid fault quake. Now, for everyone out there, the thing that really is worrying me about all of this flooding that's going on, aside, I mean, it's devastating. People are losing their homes, but you know, on the other hand, if they don't flood the towns, they're going to lose the cities. Baton Rouge and Louisiana are toast if they don't try and contain this. And what could happen to New Orleans, it could be much worse than Katrina, actually.
That's what I've heard.
So, but the other thing is water is heavy, okay? I mean, you know, if you don't believe me, go to the office, get a 5-gallon jug of water from next to the water cooler, and go run up and down the stairs a few times. You know, you'll get the message. It is real heavy. And here we have all this water in the Mississippi and all of this weight. Now, to put this in perspective, when they filled Hoover Dam, all right, and Hoover Dam is really not sitting on any major fault lines. It's got some minor fault lines around it. But they had a lot of small tremblers around 3.0 while they were filling the reservoir. And actually, this is a very common thing that happens when they're filling reservoirs, because all this extra weight and the earth has to take, it's settling and it has to absorb it. Well, you know, Hoover Dam Reservoir is big, but man, this doesn't even hold a candle to the Mississippi and what's happening right now. And so we're looking at all of this huge weight. And I mean, I've had a lot of information flowing into me that from months ago, that there was a tremendous concern about what we're going through right now, because I mean they're monitoring the rainfall and snowpack melts, and I mean they know what's coming.
Have you seen the USGS satellite map of the satellite photograph of the Mississippi now and before?
It just takes your breath away. I mean,
it's just like it doesn't even look like the same body of water. It's just totally, its complete complexion has changed.
Yeah, it makes you think that. Go ahead.
You know, and so it's happening. But also, the other part of this question was the Arab uprising and in the Middle East. Frankly, you know, on one hand, there's a lot of optimistic talk about, you know, their democratic forces and young students. They want dignity. They want justice. They want to be back. You know, they missed the entire 20th century, and now they're going, can we kind of jumpstart to the 21st? But, you know, what's really driving the politics and what's causing the instability and change in the region is that these are economies where it's prince and pauper, and the paupers are really feeling the increase. You know, you were talking about the price of ice cream doubles. Now, for us, if the price of ice cream doubles, so what? Because it's costing me less. I get a better deal on my cell phone plan, or I get a new flat screen for a lot less than they used to be, or I get that gizmo or that gadget, or I get my car for a really great finance program. All of this stuff, what it does is it levels out the impact so we don't feel it. But if you're talking about people have very, very little, if any, discretionary income at all, that disappears, and then they're making hard choices to how often they're going to have meat in their diet, or if they're going to have meat at all. You know, and you know how many meals a day they're going to make. You know, economics is meat, bread, and potatoes. And that's
even like a lot of people are saying it's wise to store up on things like sardines and anchovies, because if you have that, you've got like all the protein you need for a day. And then we see billions of fish, and mostly sardines and anchovies, dying,
and they're
all over the world. And these cockamamie stories that they're giving for the reason of it makes no sense. They're all using like local anomalies, like red tide, or like, you know, they ran out of oxygen in the water, or this, that. And to me, those excuses don't make sense when you have stuff happening in Ventura Harbor and at a dam in Australia nearly on the same day, where thousands of fish die and wash up on the beach. I mean, it's like, okay, so there's red tide at the dam in Australia? I mean, this is happening like in a sequence of events that's almost synchronous at times. So I think it's big. It's a global thing. I think it has, personally, I believe it has a lot to do with the magnetic pole shift that's going on.
I do think so.
You know, that's an interesting thing. I want to read this follow-up from Boris Artemenko, because I said, you know, well, be a little more specific, and he came back, and Susan put this into my private chat, and he says that he has folks in Brazil, in UK, Midwest, and compasses set in fixed places, shifts to minus or plus up to 3 degrees from magnetic north setting. and so they're seeing variances.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that we were reporting, I believe, on Yowza back in 2008, there were 2 jets, and as a matter of fact, you know, they just pulled up the wreckage from one of those jets. They wanted the black box. It was the Air France jet.
Oh, right.
And 2 of them in the South Atlantic went down. Now, what was not reported on our news entertainment channels, you know, like we don't have news channels anymore. They're just news entertainment.
We don't.
And it makes me, yeah, I mean, yeah, he was a producer at CNN, but I mean, that was back when they were lean, mean, running in the red and did hard news. And now hard news is something that is kind of like a filler in between the fluff. But
that's right.
After these jets went down, because they were both fly-by-wire, all right, and the Russian Air Force designated that area as a no-fly zone. And what we do know is that when magnetic pole shift is underway, the first signs of it, where it first starts doing reversals, is in the South Atlantic. So when I was looking, and you know, we have Malaysia, but he's got Brazil, he's got folks that are seeing this. That begins to tell me that the initial harbinger signs of a pole shift, which would be limited to the South Atlantic, as the researchers tell us, is actually starting to mushroom out, if what Boris Artemenko is saying. Richard, you want to take a shot at that?
Yes, it's very interesting you mentioned the South Atlantic, because I think this is the place we find the Sea of Vergas. This is where all the fishes goes for you know, fraying or to get eggs, to deposit their eggs, or they call that Vergas, V-E-R-G-A-Z or S, I'm not sure, but this is exactly located at this South Atlantic area, and I mean the scientists has always think that has always thought that this place was full in electromagnetic you know, field, or you know, very, very strong. So this is very interesting. But I would like to go in some explanation about the core of the Earth. I think the inner core of the Earth is heating up, and as it does that, the magma rise, and you know, the component inside, or the matter inside the Earth, start to melt. And it is, I would give you an example. You take 2 magnets. If you take the magnets and you place them in front of each other, very close to them, to each other, okay? And you take the same magnet and you remove them, you pull them apart. Will you expect any changes in their magnetism? The answer is no. But if you heat up one of these magnets very high, at a very high temperature, so it becomes red, and you do the same exercise, okay? You put them very close together, and then you will witness a change in the magnetic field of the one that you have heated up. So this is what is happening with the Earth. I think this is heating up. I think the Earth is taking expansion, and so as it takes expansion, it's the rotation of the Earth is decreasing. You know, this is and there are some scientific paper about that. So I think this is what is happening. So the core is very fragile now, and it is subject to very
destroys magnetism. That's can be easily shown and demonstrated.
Affected, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's, I think Casey, as I recall, said that, you know, the pole shift was going to be coming up from the core, bubbling up from the core, as that's what's going to cause it. So, I mean, it's like, the planet's a tea kettle, and if you just heat it up, you know, it's got to let off the steam somewhere. And there are 2 more questions that come in, and one I want to throw at you, Rick. Given what you've seen in the Torah code, let's say the Torah code is going to be, and just for the listeners out there that don't know what Torah code is, you've probably heard of Bible code with Michael Drazen. Bible code is really a small subset of Torah code. Torah code is the greater body of research that dates back nearly 1,000 years. And Drazen did a fabulous job with his limited resources. The Toric code researchers that Richard is working with are using state-of-the-art cloud computers and computing arrays, a lot of horsepower, and they really control the process. They have a linguist that is phrasing the questions that they're going to use for seeking out the Toric codes. Then they actually pretty much find them the same way that Drazen did, where you're looking for the skips, the patterns to show up. And that's really where Drazen focused. But then after that, where Richard's group really comes on strong is in validation. In other words, comparing it to monkey text. How statistically strong is it? How credible is that matrix? And for example, in Drazen's first book they went through, and a significant percentage of those just simply failed to meet the criteria for the threshold of credible matrices. So with that, let me throw this question to you. And again, this comes from Why I Need a Username, and still don't have an answer on that one. So it could possibly mean that major events will start in July a little earlier than we thought. Interesting question, Rick. What say you?
Well, I think what I'm looking at is I'm amazed at the complexity of the whole end-of-days scenario that we've read about for many, many years. And it's a complex tapestry of geophysical and political events happening almost simultaneously. Mm-hmm. Perhaps what's going on with the Earth and the stars is affecting people in some way, putting pressures on people's psyche almost to act in an irrational fashion. But the problems in the Middle East right now go back thousands of years and aren't easily fixed. And there's so much anger there that it's about to spill over, I think.
All right. And
I just had something happen with my phone here. Can you still hear me?
I'm hearing you.
We got you. Now, this is a good question I want to throw to Richard in Canada.
Okay.
And again, this one is from why this guy doesn't forget about the username. I don't know why, but sometimes you just see something that just sticks in your head, like I pick an hound dog's ear. Anywho, Marshall, what do you guys think? Is there a Planet X Nibiru, which is gravitationally bound to the solar system, along with a separate binary companion to the Sun Nemesis destroyer stars? Do you think there are two? Okay. Really, this is an interesting question because we have Elenin. And I know that I just saw a glimpse of someone in the chat room going, "Stop calling it a comet." She was really perturbed about that. But one of the things that we've speculated on what the nature of Planet X is, and I have really come to the point where I call it the 7x35 threshold. 7x35 is the most popular size of binoculars sold today in America. And you use them for sporting events and hunting and bird watching and so forth. You get these, online on Amazon, $30, $40 on sale. Well, when we're able to stand out in our backyards and use our little 7x35s, that's about the time the governments are going to finally level with us with what they know. So up until that time, what we really have to do is think for ourselves and try and piece this together as best we can. I mean, to me, a lot of this really seems like a huge picture puzzle with the corner pieces missing. But in answer with, we have Elenin as a comet, huge coma, and so there's a lot to this thing. And I am an adherent to the electric universe theory, which we traced back to Moscow University quite many decades ago. But there's also a lot of other modern proponents of it as well. The other thing that we have is the possibility that we're looking at a mini constellation, which is a brown dwarf with several moons and planets, satellites around it. So we're talking about something that is, if we apply two-dimensional thinking to it, All right. Remember Star Trek, Wrath of Khan?
Right,
And
I do.
Captain, he's a two-dimensional thinker. You know, oh, God, yeah, I got a great idea. Okay, that's great. Let's go up his gas pipe. And so you got to think like Kirk. You think three-dimensionally in it. And but with this many objects out there, I mean, it becomes anything's possible. So with that, Richard, I'm dropping this hot potato in your lap. Go for it, Canada.
Okay, so the question is, do we think there is more than one object? We're not talking about Elenin, but two dwarf stars or several satellites or something like that. Am I understanding well the question, or?
Yeah, what he's really doing is do we have a, you know, instead of, think of a pool table, is this one cue ball called Elenin, or do we have a whole bunch of cue balls, you know, going every which direction?
Okay, I really think that we are talking about two different objects, but they are linked together by some things, and I think the key is electrical. I've made some research about using the prophecies, the ancient text, the Bible, and I've done a very extensive research about the Avebury crop cycle of 2008, and I've discovered a orbit from the crop cycle. I've discovered an orbit, and I've been able to validate it with others, symbolism, or the Chartres Cathedral as an example. In that cathedral, you can find an astronomical horloge there, and I've studied that things too, and I found the same orbit. So I think that we are dealing with the kind of brown dwarf, a very small type of star, but it's not the only thing we are dealing with. We are dealing with the complete small solar system. So it includes the planets around it. So maybe Elenin is one of the satellites that was turning around this star, but I'm not sure. I continue to think we're dealing with two different objects here. So
I agree with that.
But you know, we have different objects, but the question is are we dealing? Is what's happening right now a result of interactions between these objects? You know, I mean, there's really a legitimate concern, a legitimate interest that Comet Elenin could be under intelligent control because of the erratic course changes. On the other hand, could these erratic course changes be the result of its interaction with another body that we're not seeing yet, as well as our own sun?
I think there's several objects included in Elenin. There's several chunks of objects turning around it, because I told you, I've seen some picture of that object, Elenin, and it seems clear that there are several, not just one core, but you see one core, one main core, but around it, it seems clear that there's some other object turning around it, or I don't know, but this could pretty much make these things, you know, wobbling around, and you know, its orbit. So I think it has nothing to do directly with the Nemesis star, or Nibiru, or you can name it. But I think there is an electrical connection that has been made in between the two objects. This is why this object Elenin will become a very destructive object, because it is very highly electrified, or you would like this expression, Marshall, energized, like you know, Captain Kirk would say. So energized, you know. So this is what I think.
We can't beam this thing out.
So, but I would go further in the verse from Zechariah Sitchin. You know, we do you remember when the moon in its calculated time is not seen? We could go with the second verse. It is very interesting. So it goes like this.
This is Sitchin's translation of the Sumerian text.
Absolutely.
And that's an important distinction. I mean, this was the first civilization on the planet. And this is old material. So, and read that verse now.
Okay, this is the second verse is like that. It goes that way. When a comet reaches the path of the sun, field flow will be diminished, and uproar will happen twice. So if we take a look at Elenin, it will reach the path of the sun around September 5 or 6, the 6th. And it will align 2 times. The first alignment, the next first alignment we will have will take place on September 26 this year. And not longer after that, another alignment will take place on November 22, if I remember well. It's like a month and a half in between both alignments. So the verse goes that way. An uproar will happen twice, two times. So it's very interesting. And I don't know you, but me, when I read field flow will be diminished, it makes me think about the Earth magnetic field collapsing.
Well, so, yeah, but the questions that we've been getting from Why I Need a Username about all of his friends around the world that are reporting back to him, magnetic fluctuations. In other words, they're starting to see things. They're starting to see the early signs of it. So it's not like we have to wait for this to happen. But by the time September rolls around, it's rock and roll time.
Yes, I think we can expect very pretty much problems around September, August, and October, November. So I think we will expect another wave of problem with the Earth magnetic field. I do think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a rough time. So I mean, definitely, yeah, I still maintain Elenin as a comet, and no, I'm not telling you don't have to go out and buy your supplies.
That's right.
I mean, that's it. Grab the wife, the kids, get them in the car, and go load up, man. Just go load up. And by the way, we have on the show, on the past shows, we're dealing with just those kinds of things that you need to go out and buy. I'm really focusing heavily right now for people in terms of preparation and preparedness. And I want my audience out there to know something. As a researcher, I think the one thing that just hurts me more than anything else right now is that when I do these shows, like my Advanced Community Planning series on Cut to the Chase, my podcast, and also when I do these survival preparation shows, this show, 4, 5, 6, 7 times the traffic and interest of survival and preparation. I mean, those shows just really they do okay, but they limp along. And it's not the numbers that, how many people listen, that's ego. What hurts me as a researcher is it tells me that folks are just saying, I just want to keep dabbling. I just want to keep playing around with this. And I really don't want to take it seriously. I don't want to take responsibility for this information. And, it's just a frustration that I feel because I know, the time is going to come that these people are going to look back on this window of opportunity that they have missed, and they're going to go, boy, was I as dumb as a sack of hammers. And, they're sitting there and they're going to watch their family starving to death. It breaks my heart when I look at that. And I know, folks, I go on like a broken record. Prepare, stockpile, prepare, stockpile. I'm a broken record. But things are happening now that we said would happen years ago. And years ago, there was the comfort and distance of time. It wasn't that clear and present danger. Well, it is now because, September is going to be a rough time. And I want to answer one question that's in from 211 Bones. Could this event be mind-altering as well? I experienced a vision during a trance of time when the human consciousness will be elevated, and during my vision, the sky was red. 211 Bones, first off, you are not alone. I get reports like this all of the time, and I have for, I've been doing this since 1999, and I first started seeing the red sky reports coming in probably as early as 2002, 2003. And so people have been having these dreams and visions of seeing red skies, tsunamis, 2 suns, and they're continually reporting this. In my book, Crossing the Cusp, Surviving the Edgar Cayce Pole Shift, I address this directly as to who survives. And it's not what you might think. It's not going to be the ones who have all of the wealth, because there's going to be an event the ancient Egyptians warn us, and they call it the Great Winnowing. And the people who are going to get through the winnowing are not going to be the money folks. They're going to be someone else. And so I think that if you read through Crossing the Cusp, it'll resonate with you and connect with you. I know that for most people out there, it's a more advanced book. I generally tend, as a researcher, to be ahead of the pack. I mean, you know, you can't help it because I'm able to do this because I publish the books and it supports the effort. I do this 7 days a week, and consequently, it just lets me to leapfrog my audience. And Crossing the Cusp is something that is going to be more meaningful to more people as we come closer to a time like September. But for those of you that are having these dreams and visions, that is an excellent book for you to read. And, also he points in there, he says it will be a very close pass. And it could very well be. You know, we have a video up on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/yowbooks, and we have, I believe, 8 different flyby scenarios. And, ranging from Planet X crosses the ecliptic on the other side of the sun, opposite from us, and then on our side of the sun. You can kind of guess which side of the sun relative to us is not going to be the better side. And if it is something that passes between us and the sun, we're looking at an extinction level event that could take out 90% of the life on the planet. So as they say in real estate, there's 3 rules: location, location, location. And that's also the reason why Crossing the Cusp, I'm a Star Trek nut. I love it and always have. And, Captain Kirk beat the Kobayashi Maru scenario, which is the one that Star Trek uses to test people, commanders, as to how well they can die today, And
right.
He beat it because he cheated on the test. And that was the personal mission for me when I wrote Crossing the Cusp, was I said, okay, how do I beat Kobayashi Maru? And my last chapter is devoted entirely to that. But we have, and if you guys could just go ahead and pick up this conversation for me for a second.
Yeah.
And I'm going to throw this now to you and Richard.
Third verse?
Please, go ahead.
Okay. There's a third verse from the Sitchin's book, translated directly from the Sumerian text, according to Sitchin, okay? And the third goes that way. When Jupiter goes with Venus, the prayers of the land will reach the gods. So I have checked on September 26th, and you can, folks, check by yourself. If you use you can go on the GPL, LNN GPL orbiter viewer, and you will see, if you put the date on September 26th, that Venus is perfectly aligned at this very date with Jupiter. You will witness a very, very perfect alignment with both planets. This is just amazing. And the prayers of the land will reach the gods. It makes me think of people will panic upon the earth. I'm thinking about huge earthquake, very big problems. The earth magnetic field will really fluctuate at this time, and people will start to really ask what's going on. And it makes me think of an invasion of alien or UFO after that. According to the Bible, we say it's true. And Nibiru, it comes after that with the gods. Nibiru with the gods, just after, always after the first sign. According to the OPs, we have the blue Kachina first, and then we have the red Kachina. So don't ask yourself if you have to prepare later. This is now, and maybe now it's not too late. It's never too late, but it's very late. These things are coming, I'm very sure. And one last thing I would like to talk about. It won't take long.
Go for it.
September,
we got about 5 minutes left. I'm going to have to.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got about 5 minutes.
Okay. In September, there's another great sign that will happen. Okay. If this is in Bible, chapter 12. I'm going to read it. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun. Okay, that makes me think of September because in our days, we are living in the 2000 years, okay? In our days, every year the sun is situated in Virgo during September. So that leads us to the month September. Let me continue now. And the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Okay? On September 26th, you can see the moon moving through September 27, 28, 29, September 30. The moon is directly placed under the feet of Virgo, the woman. So this is just crazy. And then after that, there is another wonder in heaven, a great red dragon. It is after that. So you can read this verse if you want in the Bible. This is very interesting. To me, it validates all others, or the others' prophecies validate the one in the Holy Scriptures. So this is very amazing what we can expect this year. So this was my points.
Well, this is a convergence of prophecy.
Yeah.
It's all converging. And I mean, it just keeps converging. And
people are going to have many chances to find out about it, and if they continue to ignore it and just think it's just all baloney, then they'll be really surprised. But something is happening. I mean, if you can't see that it's happening with all the things on the earth that are going on today, and continue to be highly skeptical, then I don't know how much more proof one needs, you know?
You know, it's good. Sometimes I feel like we're trying to convict O.J. Simpson here, you know? You have to, you know, if the glove don't fit, you got to acquit. Of course, you know, the fact that he was wearing, you know, a Playtex glove underneath the glove, you know, besides the point. But, you know, what really bothers me is, in addition to the fact that I see all of the people really reticent about going out and starting to prepare and set aside supplies, is all of the disinformation that's being pumped to, frankly, keep people from doing that. Yeah, to confuse the issue so that folks cannot get a clear bead on it. And because they cannot get a clear bead, they're not going to take action. But I'll tell you, the guys that are taking action are the people who make serious money dealing with risk. Either they're managing it, they're taking it, they're evaluating it, or they're mitigating it. But people who work day in and day out with some form of risk. And we sell books directly from our yowbooks.com website and the other sites as well. And, you know, I have a who's mailing list. And it really surprises me how many security firms, insurance firms, you know, folks that have this, people who are financial advisors, and they're buying it on their company account. Financial institutions are buying from me, you know, and they understand. If you're looking for a smoking gun, you'll find it next to a smoking body, and it could very well be your own. And so this is a threshold issue, and that's the thing people have to understand, is at some point you have to just say, you know what, I'm going to make up my own damn mind, and I'm going to do it. I'm not going to wait for the lemmings to run so I can jump in and feel confident in numbers. And we're going to see a lot of folks that they're going to come late to the party, and it's going to be horror and panic. And for those who are prepared, don't try and save them. Just get the hell away from them, because they are going to be like drowning people. They will take you down with them.
Do we have time? Do we have time?
We've got about 1 minute. One minute and do it, and then I'm going to have to close out the show because I promised Alan Steinfeld, he does on BBS Radio New Realities, and I'll be on his show just as soon as we ring off here.
I'd also like to give a plug for Watchers 2 if people want to buy it and watch it. I think we've had some really tremendous reviews. Just go to pinlight.com, and you can see the link to L.A. Marzulli's site, and that would be helpful to us so we can continue doing this kind of work. But
Absolutely.
I wanted to read part of this Enoch chapter 80 that Richard just turned me on to here. I think it's just profound.
Go quick. I got to run.
And the fruits of it's just talking about the time we're living in now. And then the fruits of the trees shall be withheld in their time, and the moon shall alter her order and not appear at her time. And in those days the sun shall be seen, and he shall journey in the evening on the extremity of the great chariot in the west, and shall shine more brightly than accords with the order of light. And many chiefs of the stars shall transgress the order prescribed, and these shall alter their orbits and tasks, and not appear at the seasons prescribed to them.
The sun is so bright now. This is completely right. Completely
It's
right.
Guys,
incredible.
Guys, I'm going to have to.
Thank
I
you,
got to
Richard.
cap the show. I'm going to have to cap the show, but obviously we're just going to have to keep this dialogue going. So let's come back again and do it next week. You guys don't
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Marshall.
Thank you, Marshall.
Rick, you guys want to come back and continue this dialogue next week?
Oh,
I can if Richard can.
I think we can. I'm going to see my agenda, but I think it will be possible if
Good.
If you would
All
like.
Right. Well, if we can swing it, I'll get it announced. But for now, fellas, I'm sorry. I got to wrap up the show. I've got another commitment. Thanks. This was just really awesome, and thanks to all of you in the virtual room for fabulous questions. Tonight, we've really got a lot going on. I mean, we had a really, really awesome Comet Elenin show a couple of weeks ago, and the downloads are just coming on hot. I mean, this is probably one of the biggest shows we've done ever. And tonight, really following up on finding the alternate theories and explanations for Comet Elenin. Now, one thing that is, for me, the one holdback on Comet Elenin is that if it is a brown dwarf, the nemesis dark star, the twin to our sun, well, if it's inside the orbit of Jupiter, we should be seeing it now. We shouldn't have to be looking for images of a young comet on the internet that are being provided by astronomers. But that does not mean this is not a significant object. It does not mean it is not causing problems for us on the planet. But what I have found is, after chewing through a lot of scenarios and looking at it, the call on it that I think is, well, probably closest, at least for me, it feels right for me, is the Hopi prophecy, the blue Kachina, the blue star Kachina and the red star Kachina. The blue star is the harbinger of the red star, and the red star is the one that really gives us the oh baby, you know. So with that, just starting off real fast, let me throw to Richard in Canada. What's your initial thoughts on Comet Elenin coming into it?
Oh, my initial thoughts is a great sign. A lot of people talks about we are now entering in the last days, you know, and we have several aspects that lead us to this conclusion. We have some, you know, political ones. We have, if we look at the weathers, it's going crazy everywhere on Earth. So, but I was very, you know, attracted by the Elenin comet because there was a lot of things being said about that comet everywhere on the internet, and you know the way they announce us, they have discovered it. So I get in it and I start my own study about that things, and I have discovered very, very amazing things. Like you said, some are directly related to the Hopi prophecies, and some with the Sumerian ones.
I think that's the interesting thing that we were seeing with the Sumerian aspects, and but also we have mentions in the Torah code. There's different. I'm seeing a convergence of prophecy here that's bringing to it. That being said, I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater for those that believe Comet Elenin is a brown dwarf. I am not inclined in that way, I would say, is because you have a planet-sized object, particularly something that's the size of a gas giant, that's inside the orbit of Jupiter, and this close to the ecliptic, where, frankly, 90% of all of the observations are made from our planet. Now, it just says to me, hold on a second, you know, there could be something else going on here. When I did my article, could Comet Elenin be a decoy? What I was seeing, fellows, is what I would call a change in the chatter. You know, when we get these alerts from Big Sis, says that we're anticipating a terror attack because there's an increase in the chatter. And what they're talking about is that there's more discussion, and also the discussion is not along the usual vein. So they notice the difference. It may not be substantive at a granular level, but at a larger pattern level, they see something. And I've been following the Comet Elenin story right from the beginning. I mean, this was not something that slipped past me. But I was really more interested in stepping back from it, not getting deep into all the competing theories, and to observe the chatter. And there are two kinds of chatter that we look for, organic and synthetic. And the organic chatter is just the natural stuff. It'll start up with a topic, and if a topic is hot, you see it ramping up. It might plateau a little bit, or it's just having a gradual rise, and then it'll hit a critical mass point and follow a normal-looking bell curve in terms of public interest. On the other hand, when you have a topic where there's a big injection of disinformation, all right, what you see is an anomalous chatter pattern. You see early spikes and a lot of heavy interest, and it can collapse within a matter of days sometimes, and then it builds back up. So that's the chatter pattern I've been seeing. And that tells me that this is just not a bunch of folks on the internet trying to make sense of something, but it's them plus others who are trying to prevent them from making sense of it. And I was wondering, Richard, I know you have your ear to the railroad track like I do. You're the big iron, thingamajig coming down the rails. How does this sit with you? Are you seeing the same thing?
Yes. A lot of information is very odd or weird because it tends to make us think this thing doesn't exist, okay, or it's very difficult to point out if it does exist or not. But you can see another tendency that make these things like the end of the world or a Nibiru. And I'm not sure, I agree with you that this thing is not a brown dwarf for different reasons. One of them is if it would be a brown dwarf in our solar system close to Mars, we would not be able to make that show first and just speak on the phone. I think that everything on Earth would be broke. The power grids and communication satellites and everything would go off by the time we're speaking now. So
right.
I think, and if we look at in the prophecies, the ancient texts, the OP or the Bible, or even in the Sumerian, it's clear that there is an harbinger sign before we see the red kachina or the red great dragon in the heaven.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Rick? What is it you're seeing about Comet Elenin that gives you pause and things that are really grabbing your attention?
Well, it hasn't been out there very long. It just kind of appeared, and one of the first things where I heard about it is you guys are all familiar with this gentleman on YouTube that calls himself BP. He started out by giving updates on what was going on during the BP oil disaster, and that name kind of stuck on his YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. And then he's continued to upload all kinds of odd information. Sometimes it's information about the sun, and gosh darn it, a lot of the times when he puts stuff up there, I'll look at it and it's hard to explain what he's found. There's some things that are really pretty bizarre.
You're right.
And it's like I think he has this very slow, kind of drolling voice. Well, I don't know what this is, guys, but it's pretty weird. So that's, to me, is rather entertaining, actually, because I think, what has this guy got this time? Well, a few weeks ago, he had used his space, program where you can plot the orbits of the planets in the solar system, and this comet came up in his computer graph. And what caught my attention about it was that it was basically coming across the Earth's orbital path in October, almost like a semi-truck at an intersection, and would kind of scream by right in front of us, and then it would be gone. And what I thought was interesting about it was that it came, 3 days after the comet it looks like it comes pretty darn close. Of course, you know, it's hard to tell on these little computer models of the solar system how far away anything is. And but yet I thought, well, that's interesting. So I started researching Comet LNN, and some people had said, oh, the name is encoded. It means extinction level event. And then it was, well, it's really named after the Russian scientist that discovered it. On not even that big of a telescope, he found it. And the comet is relatively weak in brightness. It's something like 1/23rd of the brightness of Hale-Bopp when it came really close a few years ago. But it's odd in that its core, they have said, if we can trust the information we get, it's sometimes hard to know if we're being told the truth about these things, but they say the core is 4 kilometers in diameter. So that's big but not enormous, but the dust cloud is 80,000 kilometers in diameter. So the dust cloud is really big. So I thought, well, maybe we'll get a sizable meteor shower out of it and all of that. But then, you know, I actually think Richard here sent me some white papers, if I remember correctly. I think it was you, Richard, that sent me this. I get so much stuff, it's like I have to apologize. I feel inundated sometimes by information. And you guys are great, and I always try to return the favor if I find something good to send it back to you and Marshall. But, you know, Cornell University came out with some papers on Comet LNN that said that they believed it was perturbing the Earth's mantle and causing seismic anomalies. And some of them attributed the Japan quake to Comet LNN. I'm thinking, I don't know how it would do that, but that's, I mean, these guys are scientists and coming out with this information, and it seems like Cornell University is the only viable institution that's even mentioning this stuff anymore. All the rest of them won't even talk about it. It's the same problem that L.A. Marzulli and I had just trying to get basic information about what the heck was going on with the moon. A while back when we were studying that, you know, we observed that there was a problem with it. And another interesting talk, we'll talk about the moon in a minute, but I'm not sure the moon is finished doing its moving. It may be back at its funny tricks again. And so something's perturbing the moon, I think, and maybe it's Comet LNN, I don't know.
Well, you know, I mean, it's, again, for me, it comes back to that, are we looking at a brown dwarf, or are we looking at a harbinger of a brown dwarf? Now, that's the thing that's really been hanging in my mind from the get-go, was that it's easy to find, because you look at the amount of actual data that's available on the object, and it's coming in, there's astronomers that are tracking it, they're reporting it, but they're still talking about it being a young comet with a huge, huge coma. And I know that Cornell paper is saying that coma really reminds, he calls it a georesonator effect. It reminds me somewhat of the electric universe theory. But, you know,
well, that's what
the
Chuck
real
Missler
question,
believes.
Yeah, I think the real question in the virtual chat room right now, we have Susan, and she's in there, and I've got a private chat going with her, and she's flagging stuff that seems to be indicative of what people are talking about. And this is by Dr. Kate, and she says, are we sure this is a comet versus a dwarf star? Which really goes to what we've really been talking about. My vote is LNN is a comet, period.
Yeah, according to the Cornell University, a Class L brown dwarf will have from 30 times to 80 times the weight of the mass of Jupiter. So it's a huge mass we're talking about. If this thing is this weight, this mass, and it is situated close to Mars, I mean, we would expect, or we would see now, we would see, I mean, you know, a huge problem with the orbit of everything. We would see the moon is going very far from the Earth, and the Earth would change her path or her orbit, and everything would change because we were talking about a huge mass here.
Right.
Yeah, and this was something that, you know, we really discussed this in our book, Planet X Forecast and 2012 Survival Guide. And one of the things we really felt was that this object would not be naked eye visible until it was inside the orbit of Jupiter. Assuming, you know, which If it's on the other side of the sun, that's a different situation. But
could that also be, Marshall? Could it also be because it's coming in at 90-degree angle to our normal orbital path?
Yeah, it's pretty close to the ecliptic. Huh? It's not, you know, deep under the ecliptic. It's like 5, 7 degrees only. It's very close to the ecliptic.